So number 4 asks us to write the equations below in standard form and identify the center and the radius of the circle. So again, a couple parts, standard form and then center and radius. So the thing about general form, these are all in general form, and they don't, these don't easily show the center and the radius. It's standard form that does. So we want to be able to move from general form to standard form. A, B, and C and D, they're all the same kind of problem, but C and D, notice, has a coefficient. And so I'm going to start with C and do this problem, and then you do the rest, because there's that little extra step about how to handle that coefficient. So I'm going to start, there's a couple ways you can handle this coefficient, but I'm going to go with the method of, I don't want there to be a coefficient of 9. I'd rather there be a coefficient of 1. It's easier to deal with. And I can, if I divide this by 9, it'll cancel out. The thing is I can't just go doing whatever I want to an expression without changing it. However, what's lucky is that I have an equal sign here, an equation, and I can divide both sides by 9. Whatever I do to one side, if I do it to the other, then I've created balance. So it's a nice way to be able to manipulate the expressions that we want. Whatever you do to one side, you can do to the other. So if I'm dividing this side by 9, I actually need to divide each individual part by 9. So 9x squared divided by 9 is just x squared. 9y squared divided by 9 is just y squared. 72 divided by 9 is 8x. Negative 12 divided by 9. Now, so negative 12 divided by 9 is actually a fraction, right? And I'm going to write it like that because I don't actually want it to be, I don't want to have to deal with decimals that aren't rounded. So I'm going to write negative 4/3 y. Okay, so 12 divided by 9 is the same thing as 4/3, and that's an exact thing instead of having to round to like 1.333. And then 147 divided by 9, same thing. I'm going to work with that as a fraction, plus 49/3. So 147 divided by 9, you can take out a 3 from both, and 147 divided by 3 is a 49, and 9 divided by 3. So this now is still equal to 0, because 0 divided by 9 is 0. So this now is, I've got a coefficient of 1 here. So now my rule is I need to rearrange this so that the 8x is near the x, and the negative 4/3 y is near the y, and I want to take this over to the other side. Subtract 49/3. 49/3 to both sides. So negative 49/3 over here. Okay, and I know for a lot of you the fraction seems scary, but it's just a number. It's just a number like any other number, negative 49/3. So I can just treat it like a number. It can subtract from both sides, and it's over there. And now with my last step, I need to complete the square on both sides, right? And if you remember, the process is we're trying to take these two and add something to it to make a perfect square. Now, there's an algebraic way, but I'd like to just show you the visual way. Remember, we have the x squared we're modeling with algebra tiles. And then for 8x, we want to make a square, so we're going to put 4 on this side, 4 on this side, right? And this is the outline of a square. And we have to ask ourselves, well, how many tiles, little integer tiles, would we need to fill in to make a perfect square? Well, this is 4 times 4, 16. So I'm going to need to add 16 here in order to make a perfect square. So if I add 16 right here, now this is going to be, this will fill it out, it'll be a perfect square. But what I do to one side, right, I still have this 49/3, I need to do to the other, so I need to add 16 over there. So whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. Now, here's the thing, is that it can be a pain to have to picture it visually every time. So there's a shortcut to knowing what you need to add. You divide this middle term by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. That's how you get how long this side is. And then you square it. 4 times 4 is 16. And whatever's here times whatever's here is going to be how many integer tiles you need to add. So that's why it works. Divide this by 2 and square it. Now, knowing to divide by 2 and square is actually going to be really useful for how to handle this. Because for how to handle this, right, we need to divide the 4/3 by 2. And we have a handy calculator that can do that. Divide 4/3. So here's 4/3, right? Divide 4/3, divide it by 2, and then square it. And that gives me a decimal, but I can use my graphing calculator to turn it back into a fraction. So I now know that I want to be adding 4 nines. I want to be adding 4 nines. And whatever I add to one side of the equation, I just need to add to the other. Okay, so it can be kind of weird to have to deal with all these fractions, but it's the same process. They're just numbers. I can divide 4/3 by 2. And to show you how that works, another way to talk about this is dividing by 2. That's the same thing as multiplying by 1/2. So that's why we have 4/6, right? Which reduces to 2/3. And then when you square it, that becomes 4 nines. So that's what was happening in the calculator. So now I'm getting really close. Oh, that shouldn't be it. So now I'm getting really close. I just need to rewrite these as the perfect square that they are. Notice that x squared plus 8x plus 16, that's the same thing as the x plus 4 times x plus 4, right? So I can rewrite this, I'm going to take this over here, as x plus 4 quantity squared. X plus 4 times x plus 4. So really just like that 8 divided by 2, that's what goes there. And then for this one, the y squared term, that it's going to have a minus right there, right? And you're going to ask yourself, well, what goes right here? Well, it's the same thing. It's just this divided by 2. So what's 4/3 divided by 2? 4/3 divided by 2. Decimal, right? And then I can get my calculator to turn it back into fractions. Just 2/3, right? So minus 2/3. And now I've rewritten these and then equal to, and what's it equal to? I just need to add these together. So negative 49 divided by 3 plus 16 plus 4 divided by 9. And again, that's a decimal that I don't want to have to round. So if I just, again, turn it into a fraction, 1/9. So it equals 1/9. See how nice fractions can be because they're so tidy. That one repeating is not tidy. But this is tidy. I can write it in a tidy way. So this is my standard form, which was the first part of the instructions. Now identifying center and the radius, that's easy from here, right? Center is at -4, positive 2/3. And see how easy that's going to be to graph because I know that 2/3 is just 2/3 of the way between 0 and 1. And then the radius is just the square root of this. And the square root of that is 1/3 because the square root of 1 is 1 and the square root of 9 is 3. So the radius equals 1/3. So that's the second part, is finding the center and the radius. So you do A, B, and C. A and B won't have any fractions. So the process should be pretty basic, right? Getting the x's together and the y's together. Then you're completing the square, right? So A and B should be basic like that. D, you will end up with some fractions, so don't be afraid of them. They're just numbers. Use your calculators to help you with those.